We're on the line with Alex Galbraith. You can join him on the Gridiron Expert. That's his YouTube channel. Check it out right there for some college football coverage with him. It includes prognostications, predictions, game previews, and so forth, and then recaps on his selections every week. Alex, we can look at the college football playoff situation a little bit different than we could have a few hours ago with an unexpected result at Heinz Field with Miami going down to Pitt 24-14. Now, it's my thought that there was a case for Miami to possibly be a regular season undefeated team, lose a close ACC championship game to Clemson, and possibly still get a bid. So that's out. Now I'm thinking that as long as Clemson holds serve and wins at South Carolina, which isn't going to be necessarily automatic this season as it has been the last few years, that that Clemson-Miami championship game will earn the winner a playoff berth, regardless of what happens elsewhere, and then the loser's out. Watching the game broadcast, the announcers didn't necessarily see it that way. They thought that it was going to be difficult for Miami to get in, and I just can't imagine that a one-loss ACC team is not going to get into the college football playoff. So as we head into this rivalry weekend with Ohio State still holding a glimpse of hope in running the table, with Wisconsin, of course, needing to defeat Minnesota. They're in the Big Ten championship game. The situation with Oklahoma, trying to avoid an upset loss and make it through with one loss. The Alabama, Auburn, Georgia situation there in the SEC. Just your thoughts about where we stand and what are the possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said with Miami, I agree with you there that the winner of that Miami-Clemson game, assuming Clemson takes care of business with South Carolina, should go to the college football playoff. I know a lot of people are going to look at that Miami loss today to Pittsburgh, who was 4-7 at the time. Very uninspiring win or loss for Miami. I'm with you, though. With the wins they have against Virginia Tech, who is still ranked, and Notre Dame blowing them out 41-8, I can't imagine them leaving Miami out of the college football playoff against Clemson. Now, for the rest of the nation, you said Ohio State. I agree with that. You know, that's the best two-loss team to make the college football playoff besides Auburn, if they can knock off Alabama and Georgia. You know, Ohio State's got the game against Michigan this Saturday. They should be able to take care of business there, and then they're going to have to knock off Wisconsin. And some are saying that, you know, Wisconsin's not really a lock, even if they are to beat Ohio State in the Pac-12, the Big Ten championship game, just because they've had such a weak schedule. And I really disagree with that. You know, I don't see how you could turn down an undefeated Big Ten champion who beat Ohio State in the conference championship game, turn them down from being in the top four. But some people think so. Oklahoma seems to be almost a sure lock. I think they take care of West Virginia, defeat TCU in the Big 12 championship game in their end. And the SEC is where it's going to get really fun. Will Auburn be able to slip in there if they can upset Alabama and then beat Georgia again in the SEC championship game? And if Auburn beats Alabama but loses to Georgia, is there a chance that Alabama could still get into the top four without even have to play in the SEC championship game? There's still that possibility there. So that's where it's really going to get shaken up. But I think right now, in my eyes, I think the top four has got to be, assuming everything plays out according to plan, you got Alabama up there at number 1. I think you got the winner of Clemson-Miami sitting at 2 or 3. Oklahoma slides in, and I think the Big Ten champion, whether it's Wisconsin or Ohio State. I think those are your best bets right now because we know Auburn or Alabama will lose this Saturday. We know Georgia, you know, if they win, I think they're in, but they have the chance to lose an SEC championship game. So there's a lot of factors going into play there for Notre Dame and Ohio State sitting at 8 and 9. They've got a lot of teams to be rooting for to lose that are ahead of them to hopefully slip into that top 4.
I got to tell you, Alex, if Wisconsin wins the Big Ten championship as an undefeated team and does not go to the college football playoff, I will go on a tirade for a week. I will not be able to shoot enough videos to explain and describe and to convey my ire against the College Football Playoff Committee and the entire system if they run the table as a Big Ten champion that just defeated Iowa, Michigan, and Ohio State and still didn't make the playoff in favor of one-loss teams elsewhere that didn't win conference championships. Then I don't know what to do with this system, because I think despite the limitations of the system and the tiebreakers that the committee has to go through in eliminating teams that have like resumes to other teams, I cannot argue with what the work that they've that they've put in over the first 3 years and the results from their selections. I think they've done just about as well as they can, considering the limitations of the 5 conference champions in the 4 slots. But if that would happen, even Wisconsin as a 1-loss champion, even if they lost to Minnesota, then beat Ohio State, won the Big Ten championship, I believe that the committee would leave them out in favor of a situation where, let's say, Alabama lost to Auburn and was still sitting there at 11-1. But I don't think that should happen. I believe that the champions should make it to the college football playoff, and it should be strictly in this format, a scenario in which the task is to eliminate the worst. We don't know who that is, but we're basing it on resume, the worst conference champion. And at this point, it looks like that's going to be a team from the Pac-12. So Wisconsin, even at 11-1, or it would be 12-1 with a conference championship game win, I think should make it. I don't think they would, but I think they should make it. And then for anyone to question an undefeated Wisconsin, I just can't believe that that could even be considered.
No, I agree 100%. You and me are on the same page there. I mean, that would be ridiculous for them to leave them out. And I'm with you. I think unless, like with the Pac-12 championship scenario, I think they need to let in the undefeated or 1-loss team to the college football playoff if they win their conference championship game. Pac-12, we're sitting with a potential Washington State versus USC or Stanford versus USC, and neither of those teams should be eligible for the top 4 because they all have a couple losses there. But you're exactly right. And Wisconsin should undoubtedly be in the top 4 if they run the table, win against Ohio State. Even if they were to lose to Minnesota and beat Ohio State, I think they should be in as well. It's just one of those things, though, where the committee is very odd about strength of schedule and head-to-head and looking at, who played who, common opponents and all that. And I could very well see them, like you said, having Alabama go in there ahead of Wisconsin, even if Wisconsin were to win their conference championship and Alabama didn't even play for it. We've seen that happen before. And I could easily see it happening again because it's just, what's in a name. And I think that's one of those things. Everybody would rather see Alabama more so than Wisconsin. It's unfair. Wisconsin has had a weak schedule. Can they really help that? I mean, the division that they're in is pretty weak. The non-conference, maybe they could have scheduled some better opponents there. But with the quality wins down the stretch, I don't see them leaving them out, even if they were to lose to Minnesota.
With Alabama playing Georgia, LSU, Mississippi State, Auburn, comparing that to Ohio State, Michigan, Northwestern, Iowa, I would give it definitely the decided advantage over the Big Ten schedule that Wisconsin's faced since they've missed Penn State and Ohio State during the regular season in Michigan State. But I don't know that it's that decided. I don't know that Alabama's schedule's that difficult. I will say that if Ohio State wins the Big Ten with 2 losses and Alabama's left out after or not left out, but let's say they left out of the SEC championship game, lose to Auburn as a 1-loss non-champion, I do understand that argument going either way. I can buy into either argument of sending a 2-loss conference champion or sending the team that only lost 1 game to a team that won the conference and only had the 1 loss versus the 2 losses. I can go with either argument in that situation.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too. I mean, it really, truly could go either way. It really could. And the whole battle right now is between, the 1-loss teams and the potential 2-loss teams that could potentially slip in, like an Auburn or an Ohio State as well. But I think you and I are on the same page with that I think we totally agree on this situation. It's going to be really interesting to see how this Saturday plays out because anything can happen in rivalry week, and then how things play out next week in the conference championship weekend. Once again, anything can happen in those games. The committee's going to have a really tough decision down the stretch, depending on what happens with his Iron Bowl this Saturday and what happens with Clemson Miami next Saturday as well. So I'm very excited to see those and see what the committee decides on because They've made some odd decisions in the past, whether it's been their rankings this year or potentially their top 4 last year. So I'm very curious to see if they can maybe potentially right some wrongs or maybe fix some things they've done wrong in the past for this upcoming top 4.
So that's what could happen. In terms of what will happen, I've got to say at this point, I'm looking at Alabama to sweep through to the SEC championship. I'll make a selection on Clemson and Miami at some point later in the week. So the winner's in, the loser's out. I think Ohio State's going to win its last 2 games, beat Michigan and Wisconsin, win the Big Ten, and I think Oklahoma's going to sweep its last 2 games. And I think those are your 4 college football playoff teams. And I do think that USC would have a gripe in particular, maybe even Washington State with 2 losses against an Ohio State team with 2 losses. I do think that the Big Ten is stronger than the Pac-12, but I don't think it's a significant difference. And I do think that that team would have a claim out west, but I don't think they're going to get much consideration. So that being said, Alex, before I let you go, do you have a prediction at this point?
I think you and I agree once again on the top 4. I think the Pac-12 champion, whoever that may be, will be left out. And I think you're right. I think it comes down. I do think Alabama runs the table. I think they defeat Auburn in a close one, take care of Georgia in the SEC championship game, and they would more likely be the 1 seed. Winner of Clemson, Miami goes in, but I'm very interested to see how far Miami drops in these rankings after that loss to Pittsburgh. If they drop a lot, which it could be, will they be able to jump back into the top 4 if they defeat Clemson? That's something to keep our eye on. But I do think the winner of that should go and be in the top 4. Oklahoma should run the table. They've already taken care of TCU, and they're facing a beat-up West Virginia team. And then Wisconsin or Ohio State. I think Wisconsin takes care of business and wins over Minnesota and the Buckeyes, but the winner of the Big Ten, I think, should also get in.
All right, good stuff. We're glad to be joined by Alex Galbraith. You can join him on his YouTube channel, The Gridiron Expert, for his analysis on college football, including game previews, predictions, and then analysis of his own selections as he keeps track and keeps you informed on college football week to week. Alex, we always appreciate the discussion. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, thank you for having me.